all members of the committee an extra 5 minutes just to be here if they could be, but it looks like they might be not as punctual as we'd hoped for. Welcome to the Lifestyle, Environment, Heritage and Resilience Committee for today, Thursday the 3rd of September. As we always do when we gather here, we acknowledge and pay our respects to the traditional owners, the Aboriginal people of these lands and waters, and we acknowledge all their descendants. We also acknowledge the many Aboriginal people from other regions, as well as Torres Strait and South Sea Islander people who now live in the local area and have made an important contribution to our community. Thanks to members for joining us today. We also have some guests. Councillor Martin, great to have you with us. Councillor Curtis, thanks for coming. Yeah, we've got a couple of bigger items on the agenda today. We're going to confirm the minutes, and then we're going to deal with the Burleigh Heads Library matter first up, which is item 6.1. It is currently starred, and item number 6.2 is also starred, but I wanted to just double check. Councillor Martin, Tallebudgera Creek is your area. Did you want us to unstar that so you can ask any questions about that Tallebudgera Creek matter?
If there's no presentation, Chair, I've had a briefing on. I don't need it unstarred.
No, and what about you, Councillor O'Neill? Are you okay? All right. So we might leave that starred. Yeah, let's do that first. Let's confirm the minutes. Can I get a mover for the minutes? Councillor Fowler, seconded. Councillor Wilkinson. All those in favour? Minutes are adopted. Is there any conflict of interest declarations? No. That's great. With the forward planning schedule, which is starred, and item 6.2, which is starred. Can I get a move for the starred items? Councillor Wilkinson, Councillor Marshall. So moved, Councillor Wilkinson, seconded, Councillor Marshall. All those in favour? That motion is carried. Officers here for the Tallebudgera Creek petition response can leave us. Councillor Castro, great to have you with us. It's all right, mate. It's all good. This is probably the State Road Network that held you up. All right, we're going to kick off with the petition response for Save Burleigh Heads Library. As many of you will be aware, this is a relatively contentious issue that has enabled us to welcome members of the public into the gallery. The way that today's debate is going to go is that Melinda Bucher, who heads up our libraries team and a number of other areas of our business, is going to deliver a presentation that addresses the petition response. I'd ask that councillors, if they wouldn't mind, just, put your questions on a piece of paper or maybe note the slide that you've got a question on. We'll have questions at the end of the presentation to let Melinda get through that presentation entirely. For those of you in the gallery who haven't been to council before, welcome. Thank you for coming. It can be a bit boring sometimes. It's not always sometimes we're a bit boring in here, but there's lots of items today that I think you'll be interested in. We do ask that you can't engage with us, so you can't disrupt the meeting. That's one of the rules. And if you do disrupt the meeting, I'll ask you once to not disrupt the meeting or stop doing what you're doing. You all seem very polite and professional. I'm sure you won't be banging on the window or anything like that. But if we do have to ask you to leave, the security team will come in and escort you out. It's normally pretty straightforward. We hope that there isn't any dramas. You all seem like very professional and committed people who love libraries. And it's obviously very quiet in the library, so you would be familiar with that. We're gonna kick this presentation off. Melinda, thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair. Good morning, councillors. I have a short presentation summarising the key points in the paper before you all today. There have been many council reports and resolutions made in relation to libraries, especially in the 2000s, which represented significant library development. From 2000 to 2003, the city opened 3 libraries, Robina, Southport and Nerang. In 2005, planning commenced for Coomera Civic Hub. Then in 2007, Eleonora Library opened. At the same time, in 2007, there was endorsement to investigate the future consolidation of all library services at Burleigh into a single location. This is because Burleigh Waters Library was only acquired through the Albert Shire amalgamation, with both libraries serving the same broad catchment. A number of sites were identified as potential options, with 2 sites being prioritised, there was a potential option to redevelop the Burleigh Head site into a mixed-use redevelopment or greenfield sites at Stockland Shopping Centre. From talking to some officers who were present during this time, the Stockland sites were the preferred sites due to the vast free public parking and integration into a busy shopping centre. But ultimately, neither site option progressed, and no further report was brought back to Council on the future of the Burleighs. However, other reports and decisions continued to be made by Council, which included the closure of Cascade Gardens Library and Mermaid Waters Library and their integration into Broadbeach Library in 2008, the closure of Mudgeeraba Library and its resources integrated into the Robina Library in 2017, the purchase of land in 2018 for the future Ormo Library and Community Hub, and the closure of Palm Beach Library and its integration into Eleanora Library, and the subsequent development of the Palm Beach Library Lounge in 2021. In 2024, Council endorsed the Community Services and Facility Review Model, which endorsed the Integrated Community Hub and Spoke Model, which is based on developing larger community infrastructure that can offer multiple services under one roof or in a similar precinct. The Community Services and Facility Review Plan identified all of our community facilities, what services they were providing, consideration of future population growth, and picking up on previous council reports regarding potential integration opportunities such as the Burleighs. In terms of the arts, we have dedicated spaces that support creative pursuits such as live performance, theatre and dance. There are, however, very few flexible art hubs and creative spaces that support broad community participation, cultural development and contemporary creative practice. There are no dedicated arts-based spaces for youths that can support them in creating, rehearsing, exhibiting and presenting opportunities across local neighbourhoods. This history of library development, strategic planning, the Community Services Facility Review, future population projections, they all contributed to the report and subsequent council decision made in April 26, 2026 at Special Budget Committee, which approved the closure of the Burleigh Heads Library and the transition of this site into an arts hub. Transitioning the space into an arts hub provides a really rare opportunity to provide a space that can provide for youth visual arts development, public art exhibitions, and broad community participation in creative experiences. As part of this decision, all existing library services are to be moved into the Burleigh Waters Library. And in July this year, a mayoral minute was issued, providing funding for a temporary library lounge at Burleigh Heads Library until the refurbishment of Burleigh Waters Library was completed. Also in July, a petition was received seeking to reverse the decision to close Burleigh Heads Library, which is the subject of the report today. This report has been developed to respond to the petition, which includes 3,498 compliant signatures. So that is where the full name, address and signature has been included. Key points regarding the two Burleigh sites are summarised on this slide. Burleigh Heads Library is located near the Burleigh Bowls Club and Stage 3 light rail terminus. While well located, limited and costly parking constrains access and visitation. It has the lowest loan and visitation rate of any library in our network. Burleigh Waters Library was built nearby in 1991 by the former Albert Shire Council. The amalgamation of councils meant the city had two libraries in neighbouring suburbs serving the same broad catchment area. Over time, Burleigh Waters has become the significantly busier site. For example, in the 2025 calendar year, it processed 3 times the number of loans and 30% more visits than Burleigh Heads. It's largely due to its location, which is on a main thoroughfare, strong public transport, ample free parking alongside major community and sporting facilities. And of course, next door is the very large Burleigh Waters Community Centre. Based on current planning, Burleigh Waters will reopen on Monday, the 19th of October, and on Friday, the 16th of October, the Burleigh Heads Library Lounge will be closed to commence the Arts Hub fit-out. That site will then be reopened in January with a public exhibition celebrating a 10-year retrospective of Level Up. This graph displays the annual digital and physical loans of each library over the past 10 years. The graph demonstrates Burleigh Heads Library, shown in black at the bottom of the graph, as consistently recording the lowest loan statistics of any library in our network. Loans at Burleigh Heads Library were not materially impacted by light rail activity. Even with the cessation of Saturday trading in August 2025 at both Burleigh libraries, Burleigh Waters Library is consistently being used by customers as their preferred library location for loans. Burleigh Waters Library is shown in orange on the graph. The take-up by customers for digital borrowing is represented in the pink line, with a significant uplift post-COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, when customer borrowing trends shifted to an increased desire for online content. This trend has widely occurred across the broader library sector in Australia and internationally. Our Gold Coast community has a huge desire for online content, as you can see in the pink graph. This graph displays the annual visitation. The annual visitations of each library over the past 10 years and includes digital loans across the library service for the same period. The graph demonstrates Burleigh Heads Library, again shown in black at the bottom of this graph, as recording the lowest in visitation statistics of any library in our network. Visitations to Burleigh Heads Library suffered no material impact as a result of light rail activity. Again, when Saturday trading ceased at both Burleigh libraries in August 25, it impacted Burleigh Waters visitation more significantly though, due to its just trend of receiving more visitors than Burleigh Heads. With all Burleigh library services to be integrated into Burleigh Waters, it's been decided to offer additional services to the public. And this includes smart shelves for the returning of books, Saturday trading, and city services. So that's where, apart from getting a book to borrow, you can pay your rates and do your dog registration. And city services will be available at exactly the same hours that the library is open. The post-COVID-19 impact is again evidenced on this slide, which demonstrates changed customer visitation preferences. You can see that physical visitation is still not equal or back to its pre-pandemic levels. This trend has been widely observed across libraries in Australia and internationally. We've also included the digital loans in this graph to indicate that accessing digital library resources is for some people the only way in which they access libraries. And that is, they may never desire to access a physical library. They actually prefer their interaction to be online, and that's how they library. Digital resources like e-books, where you read where you read a book online, or e-audio books which you listen to, they all contribute to reading engagement and improve literacy development and are excellent ways of reading. And of course, there are many, many online reading communities. There's online book clubs. And there's lots of forums online where people interact and share their enjoyment of reading in all its forms. They just have a different way of enjoying their reading. This map demonstrates the reach of the Gold Coast Library Network. But the reach of the network is supplemented by the home library service. So that's where we deliver books to your front door for those people who are unable to access a physical library. We have the mobile library, which travels up and down the Gold Coast at predetermined spots for people to browse and pick up their holds. We've got the pop-up library. We use that for outreach services and events. And we've got library kiosks, which enables library members to browse and borrow books. And in the case of Palm Beach, you can also collect holds. And of course, we have our 24/7 digital library. The map also shows a 2.5 kilometre radius between each library or around each library to indicate their relative distance to each other. And it's overlaid with projected 2046 population statistics. The highest population growth for our community facility service catchments continues to be the central and northern regions. As mentioned earlier, it's proposed that once Burleigh Heads Library is closed, it will be transitioned into an arts hub. The hub will incorporate the Level Up Youth Visual Arts program, which has been instrumental in fostering the development of young local artists by providing pathways and mentorship and creative opportunities within our community. The hub will also support up to 2 established resident artists who will support the younger artists while they also do their work. The hub is being designed to enable daily access by the public to view local artworks, engage with artists, and hold public exhibitions and artist workshops. Community feedback has, of course, shaped arts and culture on the Gold Coast since 2016, with over 7,000 residents contributing through the Capturing Cultural Impact Survey. This feedback was considered in Council's adoption of the Creative Gold Arts and Culture Action Plan 2025 to 2027. Among its many actions, the plan is also focused on addressing community feedback through the 2025 Culture Count Survey, which highlighted a 6% decrease by residents who agreed they had access to arts and cultural activities in their neighbourhoods. This hub will help to address this issue for local Burleigh and neighbouring residents. The Arts Hub will include a public-facing gallery during the hours of 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. and also offer out-of-hours functions and exhibitions. As for libraries, a number of metrics will be used, both quantitative and qualitative, to measure the success of the Arts Hub. It will include participant surveys to understand whether the hub is improving well-being, social connection, community pride, creative participation, and a sense of belonging. In conclusion, the vision is that by 2027, the Burleigh catchment and its residents will be the recipients of new and additional services. This includes a refurbished Burleigh Waters Library with a new customer service offering, which will also be open on Saturdays, and there will be a new community-focused arts hub right in the heart of Burleigh Heads. This was to be the final slide of the pack, but an additional slide I've now added, which I'm just going to go through now, which was about the kiosks, which was sent to all councillors in that briefing note, just to summarise the information. So just a little bit about the library kiosks. We have 7 of them in use across the library network. We have kiosks at the Coomera Indoor Sports, Gold Coast Sports and Leisure Centre. We have one at the Mudgeeraba Community Centre, and they have the longest opening hours. Palm Beach kiosks at 11th Avenue Community Space. It has the highest loans due to the availability of customer holds. Kiosks at Labrador Community Centre and Sports House Varsity Lakes have the lowest loans. Varsity Lakes kiosk, though, is the only kiosk not connected to the city network. It connects via a modem using Wi-Fi, using a Telstra network, so it can suffer when the network drops out as it has problems reconnecting. The kiosks were acquired through a COVID state government grant, and it is possible to relocate kiosks and or purchase additional kiosks. And that's the end of the presentation.
Awesome, thank you, Melinda. On each of your desks are 3 attachments. They are simply printed versions of the emails that were sent on Monday the 31st of August and Tuesday the 1st of September in response to questions posed by Councillor Martin and other councillors. So it's just to make sure everyone has the same information and not everyone gets a chance to check their emails. There's also a graph that was produced by Councillor Martin. It talks about library loans and visits and talks about some proportional numbers, which I think might inform some of Councillor Martin's questions. Councillor Fowler, you have a question.
Thank you, Chair. I know there'll be lots of questions and debate on this one, I anticipate. I just wanted to let you know that when we do get to it, I just have a change recommendation for councillors to consider.
Yep, thanks for letting me know. Questions? Councillor O'Neill.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Melinda. Melinda, you haven't mentioned it in your presentation, but it is in the report, just about community activities at Burleigh Heads Library. I'm talking in particular about rhyme time, for instance. Fairly well attended?
Through the chair, thanks, councillor. Yes, we have traditionally held family engagement sessions at Burleigh Heads Library. They have been well attended, but we do have more attendance at our Burleigh Waters Library, where we also run family engagement sessions. Okay,
just a follow-up question, if I can. And this may be a question that you need to take on notice. Would it be possible at all, if there's space at Burleigh Heads, because there's community space there as well, to actually run some satellite rhyme time sessions still at Burleigh Heads for residents that maybe walk there with their littlies? Because I know that happens in Coolangatta. We get a lot of, people who walk into the sessions. So just. So, I don't know whether you can answer that now, but I
reckon we are going to answer that question. But why don't we just characterise the Burleigh Heads? For those who are watching online and maybe they don't know what the Burleigh Heads Library looks like, or the community centre, Fradgley Hall, what are we actually talking about here? What's the building look like? Characterise it for us.
Through the chair, it's an old building, quite square.
This is the one next to the Bowls Club, isn't it?
Yes, it's adjacent to the Bowls Club and the light rail terminus. It's quite squat. And it's quite narrow. It has a ground floor library. Before you enter the library, there is a smart external return chute, the only one in the network, so you can return books at any time, 24/7, and that's staying. You walk through the doors and there's space there for reading and browsing. The library, like all libraries, has free Wi-Fi, free public computers and a printer photocopier.
Yeah.
On the right-hand side, a very old counter and some staff administration spaces at the back. And then there's a children's space in front of you. And to the left is an atrium, which is an enclosed space. It does suffer at times from odour and water damage, which has been, we hope, rectified. And then upstairs, there is Fradgley Hall, one of the very few community halls still around. We have been using that site to offer some creative programs like Sketch Club, thank you, and circus play. So it's available for community groups to rent out a space upstairs.
So it forms part of our community centres network and you can just book it as a space, but
That's
we run
correct.
our own programs through there as almost like a customer of the community centres program.
Correct. We act as a customer when we use Fradgley Hall.
Okay, so Councillor O'Neill's question related to the programming that might happen in the library, how would that work, and could it be delivered in Fradgley Hall or in the library space? And is that the substance of your question?
Yeah, I'm aware that there are some considerations, the resolutions through the budget process that, about funding staff and things like that. But I just thought if we could utilise some of the staff from Burleigh Waters to run, some rhyme time sessions.
Yes.
In the community space there.
How would that work?
Would that be possible?
Through the chair. So the staff we have no additional staff for Burleigh Waters. So the staff are at Burleigh Heads. If we were to envisage running some children's programming upstairs at Fradgley Hall, which I absolutely think is possible at the beginning of 27, because up until 27 to be able to get permanent locked-in dates on a regular basis is a bit challenging because community has already booked certain dates. But if we were thinking from next year, You could run children's programming upstairs. The counsellor no longer sits at that site, so there's ample storage space for us to have some children's collection. We would need some reoccurrent OPEX funding to staff the hours that we were going to do programming. And I think we have done some calculations on that, but I might not discuss it in open. But we would just require some OPEX to fund that. Of course, the other option is library kiosks. So you can have library kiosks. They could be actually in the Arts Hub downstairs, but the children's programming would need to be upstairs in Fradgley Hall.
Does that answer your questions? I've got Councillor Wilkinson, then Councillor Curtis.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. And Melinda, thank you as always for presenting. You do a phenomenal job, and I want to say that the libraries team in general does a phenomenal job across our city. I guess it's following on a little bit from Councillor O'Neill's commentary, and you've somewhat answered it, but I just want to make sure that it's abundantly clear that, you know, you mentioned things like our former resolutions where we talk about a hub and spoke model where it's more or less a collaboration of uses on one particular site. From your last answer you just gave, to me there seems like there is somewhat of a hybrid opportunity that could present itself on this site. So I just want to reconfirm, is that more or less the correct way to assume that answer that you just gave?
Through the Chair, that's correct. It's just that those additional services would be upstairs.
Of course. No.
Right, so just to clarify that question, I'll Councillor Curtis next. The Fradgley Hall at the moment is accessible to the public to make a booking, but from 2027 it could potentially be used for some of these programming purposes. Is there sufficient room up there to store books, or is that not suitable?
Through the Chair, we have a very set way of doing children's programming, so we have very set books that need to be read or sung to, and we have kits that go with them, but we've had a look at the storage and we can certainly be able to provide children's programming, so the collection that goes with those beautiful early years programming, we can store all of that upstairs in Fradgley Hall.
Okay, and is there any community groups with regular bookings that you believe would be displaced by us choosing to do that? Like regular bookings in the Fradgley Hall?
Through the Chair, not from next year. So we have spoken to community centres, and they believe that they'll be able to dedicate, if it was requested, 2 days per week, that we could run family engagement programming. Okay. Set times, set days.
So my kids are 17, 15 and 13, so I don't push prams around anymore, but is it possible to push a pram up there? Is that doable?
Through the Chair, there's a ramp that goes to family engagement program.
So even though it's upstairs, it's not an impediment from a DDA compliance point of view. People with mobility issues or prams could get it.
There's stairs and pram, stairs and a ramp.
Okay, great. I had Councillor Curtis next, and then Councillor Marshall, and then Councillor Martin. Oh, okay, my bad. I missed it. Councillor Marshall, you're up.
Thank you, Chair, through you. Just, I guess, building upon that response, knowing that my office used to be there, I've moved out. I'm not 100% sure what's taken my spot. Is there any reason why the Level Up program can't just go upstairs then, base themselves in my office?
It'll be a space issue, but I'll refer that to the Arts Manager.
Through the Chair, the Level Up program requires a specific fit out for messy making spaces. So the most optimal design that has been worked on to date would be that it was downstairs in the library space, according to the decision that was made at Special Budget Committee. That's what the designs have depicted or reflected to date. The upstairs area would potentially cost more money because it's a little more confined. However, we'd have to look into that. We'd have to investigate any kind of redesign of the spaces.
So can I just ask a follow-up question about that? What is the GFA of the ground floor? Does someone know?
I'm just going to need to refer to our infrastructure person.
Yeah, do you mind coming out? Is that all right? Thank you, that'd be awesome. That's all right, just come and sit down. That's awesome. That's great. Everyone, this is Mr. Bartlett. Great to have you with us. So 480 square metres is the lower level. And is it the lowest? Maybe you should come around, if that's okay. Do you mind switching chairs? Or even if Melinda... Maybe, actually, it's all right. Andrew, just come up to the microphone. So The GFA of the ground floor is 480 square metres. Do you know what the GFA of the upper level is, the Fragile Hall is? Is it larger or smaller than that?
Total. I'm not quite sure. I'll have to come back to you on that. Take that on notice. Yeah.
For someone who's familiar with it, do you think it's larger or smaller, Councillor Marshall?
I guess it depends what we're talking about. I mean, Josh and Councillor Martin and I, both our officers were up there with staff. I'm not sure who's out the back in terms of security anymore. So I would imagine the entire upstairs is a hell of a lot bigger than what it is downstairs. That's not even including Fragile Hall, but utilising Fragile Hall definitely would be larger. That was my follow-up question. I'll follow up that in a secin if...
Yeah, that's right. You've got the floor. If you want
I guess knowing that we have to have a specific fit out for the level up, and I admit I'm not, I don't understand, I don't fully acknowledge knowledge of that. But is there potential then just for the whole library to be relocated upstairs, knowing that we've both moved out and not even touching Fragile Hall unless we're doing the rhyme time? We seem to have a large area there.
I think the short answer to that is that Council has resolved through the Community Services and Facilities Review that the libraries be amalgamated, and the Special Budget Committee has not allocated a budget for a library to be located there. I think it doesn't sound like there's anything tangibly that could prevent us from resolving to do that, but it would have to be a matter for the Special Budget Committee to allocate the required operational expenditure to maintain a library there, which can't be done by this committee, but we can refer it to Special Budget Committee to do so. Do you have anything to add?
Through the chair as well, if you take over Fragile Hall, you obviously displace the communities that are using Fragile Hall. So downstairs, we're able to offer level up, offer a public exhibition space, utilise that site to be able to cope with wet and messy spaces, but still have public exhibitions. Doing that type of fit out upstairs, apart from displacing the communities that use that, is that it's a totally different type of structural change that would need to be considered and certainly out of scope.
Yeah. Does that answer your question? You can keep asking questions. You've got the floor. So if you feel like it's not clear enough.
So I appreciate that. And I'm not necessarily saying take over Fragile Hall. Keep Fragile Hall as a bookable resource for the classes and to amalgamate that, but almost turning upstairs into a library lounge, knowing at the moment there isn't much need. Both of our officers have moved out. I'm not sure currently where security and those officers are, but trying to utilise that space for a library lounge and then having the bookable space in Fragile Hall for our classes that we can put people in, move people out, and we wouldn't displace anyone.
Through the chair, just to clarify, in terms of that location, that's not Fragile Hall, but the actual locations where councillors used to be located, there are a number of business units that are currently residing there, so any consideration of utilising that space would have to take into account movement of those business areas.
Yeah, which would be subject to a further report.
100%.
Yeah. So the short answer is I don't think we can do that immediately, but it's not beyond the realm of possibility pursuant to a council resolution. Councillor Martin, you were next on my list.
Thanks, Chair. I have a lot, but I won't dominate it right now.
You're welcome to dominate it, brother. Now you have the floor. You can do your thing.
No, level up. Are you able to talk to us about it? Because obviously, through the special budget process, the decision was made to close the library and bring in level up. It wasn't, it wasn't, let's say, a separate report. But are you able to give us an idea of, okay, what does it actually look like on the ground for the year? Who's there?
Yeah,
how many people?
Tell us about level up.
Tell us about level up.
Maybe that's a question for Fleur.
Through the chair, the Level Up program runs for 3 to 4 months, twice a year, and we have 4 to 5 artists every cohort, depending on what kind of artistic discipline they are developing towards professional practice. So we have a arts officer running the program. We have another arts officer assisting with installation and the exhibition hang and the program itself. And we also bring in mentors and people to undertake workshops. It's very specific to developing a professional practice in contemporary arts or animation or film or whatever the particular discipline may be. So there's quite a bit of activity coming and going for that creative practice to be developed, and then there are open studios as part of the showing of the program within the 3 or 4 months of the program. Then there is a public exhibition of the program and the outcomes of the particular cohort, so that will be twice a year. As part of this particular plan for the Burleigh Heads Arts Hub, we would also have artists in residence, so they will be doing activations as part of their work that they would be carrying on. They would also be supporting the emerging artists in the space, and there would also be specific exhibitions that, when the Level Up program isn't actually running for those 3 to 4 months, the more professional practicing artists within the Gold Coast would have an opportunity to book the exhibition space and have all kinds of different installations and exhibitions in that creative hub. So we've really tried to design a hub in this particular ideal location that is really multi-purpose and has a lot of different capabilities across many different artistic disciplines. Does that answer? Question.
So just to follow on from that, what you're saying, there might be sculptors, there might be painters, there might be digital artists, there might be people using different type of materials, and there's effectively a workshop of sorts where they're actually creating that. Now, sometimes if you're a digital artist, there might be a computer and a screen, but sometimes when it's some sort of sculpture or some sort of other more hands-on workshop, it takes up more space and requires more workshop space. Am I reading that correctly?
That's correct, yes, with all different kind of materials. So there's specific flooring required and, messy making spaces.
So if there's a sculptor working with metal, they may end up having some metal cutting material which has some safety mechanisms around it. Maybe not quite like that, but... Potentially
not metal in this particular scenario, but yes, they might be working towards creating a sculpture which they would do off-site or get it fabricated in a specific studio scenario.
Councillor, you still have the floor, and I'm going to come back to Councillor.
And just on that, so day-to-day, Monday to Friday, or even on the weekends, if someone went in there, would you expect there's people there, there's activity every single day? Or is it sometimes not? It sounds like it's maybe a bit sporadic.
Through the chair, we've actually we've tried to design the Arts Hub fit out so that there is a public gallery space open from 10 till 4 every day. So there will be specific exhibition space, then there'll be a workshop space with the particular flooring and fit out for the studio and making process and the workshop process. And there's also going to be like a community sort of gallery where that work could be displayed, open to the public 10 to 4 every day. And then there will be those functions and exhibitions on top of that to really sort of stimulate that participation from the broader community.
So what we've got you on that question, to what extent has this design work been completed? Like you're talking about something that sounds quite tangible. What stage is that design phase at?
The design's been finished and it's currently with infrastructure.
Okay.
So that's in terms of the makers, and then I'm interested about the who goes and how many people go. I guess it hasn't been at Burleigh Heads before, but we've had Level Up, I think, at Coolangatta. What's the sort of foot count? Like the library, I think, is 53,000 last year visits. What sort of numbers go through Level Up? Is there an attendance count?
Less than 53,000 probably, but go ahead.
Through the chair, I think our first initial calculations based on the creative artist in residence and creative spaces, in addition to the Level Up activations, in addition to a fairly new community art exhibition space, I think our calculations were around about 16 to 20,000 per year. However, we would be establishing a baseline once we have run the programs for around 6 months so that we could understand the utilisation and the visitation and the participation over that time. And that is very much based on previous cohorts in different locations. So we would have to really establish that visitation rate within the first 6 months to give a better picture, better idea. And being in a place like Burleigh Heads, we expect that to be higher, potentially much higher.
You've still got the floor, Councillor.
You have a yield for now and come back.
Councillor Wilkinson, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. And mine sticks on this discussion of level up. And Fleur, thank you for those answers. I always appreciate the work you do as well. The arts, but I want to make it clear too, Chair, and I think you'd agree with me, we want to see the support of both libraries and arts across our city, and we're obviously trying to make sure that we're trying to deliver that in a way that's, I think, practical for everyone across our city as best as we can. My question, I guess, comes down to, and Councillor Martin touched on it a little bit, can you just explain where level up has occurred before, just to give, I guess, a broader understanding for anyone watching online or anyone present today? Where has this happened before in our city?
Through the chair, the previous delivery of Level Up occurred at the 4217 Transit Centre, so where that site is now being redeveloped for the music hall for the city. So I believe we moved out of there in early 2025. That particular site really did activate that precinct. There were creative residents and groups in the old ticketing bus stations, the box office for the bus station, and there were five artists within the studio space for Level Up there, and there was very public kind of access to the work because it was all glass, and it really did activate that space really well. Prior to that, it was at the Coolangatta Strand within the shopping centre itself. Highly successful programs, actually quite credited nationally, really, for a program of that kind. And prior to that, I believe it started in Helensvale. So yeah, it's been running for a number of years, and there's.
I think it was in a commercial tenancy. We hired a tenancy or is that across from the library? I think it was in there. We actually hired a space. I think that's.
I believe so, and the same at Coolangatta too.
Yeah.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Still, so thank you for that answer. I think that shows that there is a great opportunity that we're looking at across our city and locations. And I guess talking on the locations, my understanding was that more or less through special budget was the mechanism that triggered us to go down this direction. Were there any other location considerations prior to that being undertaken through the special budget committee and that change, I guess, that shift towards where we're currently heading? Were there any other locations across the city that we considered this at?
Through the chair, as part of the Community Services and Facilities Review, there were a number of District Arts Hub spaces that were considered. A number of those have not been deemed feasible due to location and surrounding area and for other particular reasons. However, the specific opportunity in relation to the amalgamation of the two Burleigh libraries, this particular site has presented as an ideal location and opportunity because of the foot traffic and because of the, identified need for.
Just 1 second, Fleur.
Yeah.
You guys, we talked before. I'm going to ask you a few times. You're welcome to clap, but again, if you start disrupting the meeting, I will ask you to leave. It's really polite. You're getting great information and good answers and questions. Please don't engage in a way that disrupts the meeting. Thank you. Fleur.
Through the chair. So in short, yes, there were a couple of other sites in the southern area of the Gold Coast that were investigated. This just presented an opportunity to really sort of act on those CSFR recommendations.
Councillor Wilkinson.
That's all I've got for now, Chair.
Can I come back to you in a second? Can I ask a question about the Book Set Free program? How does the Book Set Free program work?
Through the chair, once the physical books have worked their way through the library and have been loaned multiple times, they are identified for ready to be discarded, and a component of those books are then put all into our little libraries where customers can just pick them up, or any member of the community, and take them home. So we stock those little libraries that are scattered throughout the Gold Coast, and we also get requests for big box worths of Book Set Free. Otherwise, they get completely recycled.
So do you know how many books are part of the Book Set Free program on an annual basis? Do you know how many books there are? So we turn over 20% of our entire collection through the Book Set Free program each year. Does that sound right? I'm so sorry. I don't know your name. I'm so sorry.
Through the chair, we would recycle about 25% of the physical collection through book set free. Like Melinda said, through little libraries, also non-profit organisations, correctional services occasionally contact us too, wanting books for prisons and detention centres.
And what proportion of our total collection are children's books? What proportion of our total collection are children's books? How big is the children's book as a proportion of the whole collection?
How big is the physical collection?
Yeah.
The children's component of the physical collection.
Children's component. The children's component would be approximately 25% or 30% of our total collection.
Right. And how many books do we have altogether?
We have...
It's a big number, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's the physical collections are just over 500,000 physical books.
Right. So there's some 100,000 books that we put through the book set free program each year, and then we replace them as part of a grant from the state libraries. Is that right?
Yes. So State Library, through the chair, State Library provides us with an annual grant that's to be spent on collections.
Yes.
And that annual grant is 2.48 million.
Yes.
From next year, it will slightly increase based on population increase.
Okay. That answers all my questions about that. Councillor Curtis, you were next. Thank you so much, Julie.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very concerned about preserving the strategic integrity of the long-term planning and citywide plans for the community facilities. And through the community facilities review process, we spent a considerable amount of time at the macro level really fleshing out this. And my understanding at the time, it was all about accommodating growth across the city, including in the north, where we have communities that aren't necessarily as well resourced or geographically or per capita with those key community offerings. And so, preserving the integrity of that work, which involved multiple workshops and a lot of engagement. And I remember that the process was met with a lot of support from officers. You did such a great job. So I certainly wouldn't want to compromise the work in that space. So could you perhaps explain how this recommendation, as it is, aligns with the community facilities review, and whether there would be broader strategic consequences if we were to take an alternative direction?
Through the chair, just noting that the Community Services Facility Review Plan is confidential, so the model is public. The plan identified opportunities for integration across the city, and it did not say where it had to be, but it said these are the opportunities and these are the sites that you might want to consider. The next stage of the Community Service and Facility Review is to create a roadmap, and that project is the Community Service Facility Review project is with the Office of the CEO, but in terms of the Burleys, it identified the opportunity to create an integrated site. It identified Burleigh Waters as a potential site, but just as much, it wasn't definitive about where that site needed to be. Just the opportunity to integrate the services. So it really built on that earlier report back in 2007, which also had identified the potential. So if we did go ahead and integrate the site, that actually aligns to the previous and the most current strategic planning that we have to date.
Okay, that answers your question. Councillor Muswell.
Thank you, Chair. We touched on it earlier. I think it was 480 square metres downstairs. How much of that is utilised for the activities like Rhyme Time or the group activities? Is that
Through the chair, we'll used the children's area downstairs for the programming. It would probably represent about a quarter of the space. That's just a guess, the children's area. I don't have the exact figures, I apologise, but it would probably be about a quarter of the space. So to present programming downstairs would inhibit on the art subspace that would be available downstairs.
Yes, Chair, building upon that. So if we transplanted that one straight upstairs to Fradgley Hall, we've got enough room straight away in Fradgley Hall.
Through the chair, we'd have more room upstairs in Fradgley Hall than we have downstairs to present programming.
Yeah, just for the Rhyme Time. But if and I know Melinda touched on it, do we have the scope at the moment in the 2027 bookings, or without displacing people, to run the exact same times and activities just straight away upstairs, should that be needed?
Through the chair, if you're referencing children's programming, yes, preliminary discussions are that we could run 2 sessions per week upstairs, which day may not match the days that they have run at Burleigh Heads, but they would be 2 weekday mornings. Then, for example, if Burleigh Heads traditionally ran Tuesday, Thursday, it might be that it needs to be Wednesday, Thursday. Not quite sure, but it would be 2 mornings per week running children's programming in the children-friendly time slot.
And that's not a reduction in what we currently offer. That's just a like-for-like, just through different location upstairs.
Yes.
Can I touch on something you're talking about right here? This idea of running the programs in Fradgley Hall is something I would like to delve into. Based on the information that Julie just provided, we give away 25,000 children's books each year through the Book Set Free program. She said 25% of 25% of a 500,000 collection. So I'm not sure if that's right or not. Let's say it's even less than that. Let's say it's just 10,000. There's 10,000 children's books that we recycle through the Book Set Free program. One of the challenges we have, and maybe just grab your numbers if you wouldn't mind, I'm not trying to be silly about it. What I'm trying to say is that the idea of mums gathering together in a place that's familiar to them, like Fradgley Hall, and reading a book to their kids, what if we don't need the library service? We run a Book Set Free program where that's just the hub for Book Set Free, which doesn't have a library card. People can just take books and return them as they like. Well, what would that look like? Could we just put bookshelves and all of the children's books that we're otherwise recycling, or obviously not 25,000 of them, but...
Through the chair, yeah, that is absolutely possible. Children's books are highly prized, even when they're ready for discarding, so they go pretty quick. The library is an incredibly complex operation, and so what happens in each library is that they go through a process of identifying the books that need to be discarded. They then need to be discarded on the library management system, and they then get deposited into great big tubs, FedEx tubs, and then they are either a small portion is then boxed up and sent for Book Set Free in those little libraries that we've got, or they go to correctional services, or they go for full recycling. All that would need to happen is that when staff are ready to deposit a book into one of the big bins, they would have to sort out children's books, and there would need to be a process to
locate them at that location.
Yeah, and
there's a bit of a logistics cost.
There's couriering. It's a big pick and pack organisation when it comes to libraries. It's totally possible. Of course, once they've been discarded, people can do with them whatever they like.
Yeah, the administrative function of a library is what costs the ratepayer money more than the storage on a shelf. It takes up space if you store it on a shelf, but my thought is that if we could get 1,000 kids' books out of the books we're already getting rid of and put them on shelves in Fradgley Hall, and then have some places for people to sit and gather around that, then mums and dads who are reading their kids can take, they don't have to borrow a book, they don't even have a library card, but the program itself can continue.
Yeah, that's correct.
I mean, Lower Beachmont Community Centre, we don't have a kiosk library, we just have a Book Set Free bookshelf in the community centre where I'm assuming you guys just bring Book Set Free books up once a year. I've never asked you.
Yeah, that's
but
like
just that they appear out of nowhere, and I'm assuming that's what you do.
Yeah, through the chair, that's exactly the same model at Palm Beach, where every now and then some books will be refreshed in there. I think, there's even the possibility, potentially, of being able to book 3 days a week at Fradgley Hall, and so it could, you could help to support that, because we would only be booking the service for children's programming to be for a certain amount of time each day, not the whole day. So
there's an element of that program where if you like the book you read, you want to be able to take a kid's book home with you, and the Book Set Free program offers an opportunity to potentially do that.
Yes.
I don't know who we'd displace in Fradgley Hall, but Councillor Marshall, you still have the floor. But maybe there's a solution that doesn't involve needing a library card, and we can still have some books in Fradgley Hall, assuming we're not actually displacing people who would otherwise hire that space. I don't know, but Councillor Marshall, you still have the floor.
Building upon that,
sorry,
that's okay. So I guess the roadblock to just moving the library straight upstairs, taking in consideration Mr. Connery's questions that we do have staff currently sitting there, is a budget question, I'm assuming. Is
and
that
technology and logistics. Staff, technology, logistics.
So staff, so staff through budget, but we've obviously got the space. We've got city staff currently in there. I mean, obviously our space was quickly either taken up or is sitting idle. A version of a library lounge could potentially go there where we still get the level up. I kind of feel there's an opportunity here, it not to be arts versus the library, one comes, one goes. If we want to have more people walking through the arts gallery to look at it, well, let's have a version of a library and rhyme time there. We're bringing people there for one thing, they get a chance to see the other. It just seems very much like it's an either or. One aspect of the arts misses out for the other, whereas I think there's a win here for both, knowing that we both used to sit there as our office and they've obviously gone. I realise there'll be a budget consideration for that and there'll have to be placements there, but the area upstairs is a lot larger than what we have downstairs available to us.
Yeah, is there a question in there?
Well, I'm just wondering, is it just a budget? Is this just a, can we resolve to say we want to do a hybrid version and investigate upstairs, and then it's a budget question as opposed to, we won't get that answer today, but is in terms of a change resolution, which I know we've sort of wordsmithed a bit, is it just a budget for those things?
There's nothing preventing someone from moving or proposing a motion or a recommendation today that can establish some sort of hybrid model using upstairs or downstairs or some combination of the two. We have a recommendation from officers, which is affirm our decision to close the Burleigh Heads Library, but there's nothing preventing us from overturning that. Obviously, this committee can only make a recommendation to full council, but the different formats that re-establishment might look like can take any form, and that's for us to debate. Does that answer your question clearly?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Councillor Fowler.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. If I may put the change recommendation up, because hearing feedback from multiple councillors, I feel like it's a good middle ground for us to start considering, if you would allow it. Would you like me to read through that change recommendation, Chair, first before seeking a seconder?
Is this the recommendation? Is this the one? It seems like a re-establishment, which is...
So it's a co-location of Level Up and a smaller library service. So if I could talk it through, maybe that would be clearer.
Well, are you moving it, or you want to just talk about it before we actually move it?
I'm happy to move it, yeah.
So we've got a mover and a seconder. Yeah, question.
Mr. Chair, just looking at what's in there so far, in hearing the debate and understanding the difference between I think what we understand as a library and maybe what the community understands as a library versus a library lounge setup that I have in Ormo, I think if I just want clarity, are we proposing a library or a library lounge? Because if it's a library lounge, I think the wording just might need to reflect that a little bit better.
Yeah, I'm going to because it's moved and Councillor Marshall has seconded, I'm going to let Councillor Fowler speak to that.
Thank you, Chair. So basically what this means is similar to a conversation that I did have with Miss Bucher on Monday, but it's not reinstating the library in its full form. It's a middle ground where we still have the Level Up facilities existing, and then what we also have is a smaller library operation. So it would be some books on shelves, so just hot reads, and then a children's collection, and then the reinstatement of our family engagement programming, like your rhyme time, your story time, which I know the community was really upset about missing. Also a computer there with a printer, just the one. So it's a much smaller operation to exist within the building. So whether that's upstairs, downstairs is obviously all up for debate. But the financial impacts of that decision be referred to Special Budget Committee. Right. So that's what it means. But yeah, happy to talk to it if there are no further questions.
Yeah, so we're going to continue to take questions until we move to the motion. Any other questions? Councillor O'Neill.
Thanks, Chair. Just maybe through you to Councillor Fowler. So we talked about the community activities like rhyme time. where does computer, printer, copier, Wi-Fi, newspapers, like? Because what we just talked about, if we were going to, would you maybe look at amending that a little bit? Because it does seem like it also says, I agree with you, Councillor Tozer, that it may give the impression that we're going to open this full-blown library like we've got everywhere else.
This appeal, as far as I can remember, this establishes the Burleigh Heads Library Service, which is, you know, I appreciate it's reduced, but it still has minimum requirements for staff, technology, logistics.
I mean, the Wi-Fi already exists in the building. That's not new. One computer. I mean, I don't think we should be arguing about one computer. In my view.
Yeah. But again, I think the issue is that what is proposed here does, based on what's been described to the meeting, significantly reshape the design work that's already undertaken and the deliverability of the Level Up program. It scales that program back.
Well, I'm happy to speak to the motion.
Yeah, why don't you open debate?
Yeah, sure.
If there's no other questions. Yeah, question, Councillor Martin, and then I've got a question, Councillor Hamill.
So a couple of questions here. So I'm going to try and I don't want to go into closed. But financially, I'm just seeking. So through the process, so I understand there's no savings. That's been in the public domain. So essentially, from the library, the operating cost of the library, essentially, to do Level Up this year, it is the same.
It's a trade-off.
Yeah,
that's in the public domain as well.
Yeah, Chair. Where you talked about before about a kiosk, that is, just to be clear, that's not the intent of this. The intent of this is to retain the library service.
Yes,
a library at Burleigh Heads, and not to allow for Level Up to continue at the site. There might be some consolidation of size, and through my without talking financials of OPEX, my understanding is that this proposal would not cost the same as the previous library. So there are some reductions, especially on the OPEX side.
So a reasonable person from the public would say that this requires at least 2 staff. Does that sound reasonable to you?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, through the chair. I'm just trying to getting some clarity on this recommendation, but is this no longer looking at Fradgley Hall, but actually having programming back downstairs as part of the Arts Hub? Because if that's the case, there's obviously considerable more OPEX costs that would be involved.
Yeah.
CapEx costs, sorry.
So 2 staff by themselves is in the vicinity of $200,000 for the professional staff that we have involved in there. I'm being very vague. I'm not saying specifically, but without wanting to go into discussing budget matters in open session, a general reasonable person would say 2 council staff, including all on costs, is about $200,000, and additional activities on top of that were part of the library's program do have an additional cost. So we are talking in the vicinity of probably $200,000 to $300,000 to implement this, but that's a matter for the special budget committee to discuss in closed.
Yeah, my read of this motion here is establishment of the library, but also to integrate Level Up within the existing building. So that might be the library downstairs, it might be Fradgley Hall, or the office structure within the whole site. It's the whole building. I mean, I guess we don't have floor plans here today to hatch out where, but I think it gives officers flexibility to figure out how best, whether it's Level 1, 2, or the office structure.
Do you have another question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to query the slide around the stats, and where the comments was around digital loans have been, if you could pop the slide up on the chart,
of course,
have been increasing significantly while physical loans have not. What's that? Yeah, I'll try and be quick. Look, I obviously have a lot of questions, and I think, for the community, for the community.
Did you want the physical loans graph or the visitations graph?
This graph will be fine.
Okay.
So looking at this, clearly, if you look at the pink line, it looks like digital loans are completely, by far and away, 5 times as popular as physical loans.
But also, if you combine all the physical loans together, it'd be a different conversation.
Yeah, so that's what I just want to clarify. So physical loans are still double our digital loans. Is that right?
Through the chair, physical loans still account for the highest amount of loans overall when you add it across the city. But digital loans are growing at a much faster rate.
And that's interesting when you say so. Physical loans are double that of digital loans. I think 3.5 million to about 1.6 million. But when you say digital is growing faster, I couldn't quite track that because, I mean, even our last library annual update, physical loans grew 19%, digital loans grew 12%. My question is, do you see perhaps 2015 to 2020, if you just took that 5-year snapshot, it tells a story of decline. But if since the post-COVID era, you take from 2020, and even if you start at from 2022, the trends are very different, and physical is still growing higher than digital from 22 to 25.
In the last financial year, physical loans grew by approximately 2% in 25-26. The digital loans increased by 18% year-on-year growth.
That's because of the lower base for digital loans as well.
Thanks, Chair. Reading the chart, it appears to me even just last year, physical grew 16.7% to digital's 15.9%. So I'm struggling to see certainly in the last 3 years, the digital outpace physical based on the data that's provided, and which is why I just sort of shared some of those other charts. So I don't think the data supports the notion. Perhaps if you look at the pre-COVID decline, but in the last 5, even certainly 3 years, physical is still growing faster than digital.
Through the chair, digital is actually growing faster. Potentially that graph may be slightly confusing only because the lower lines, which are showing the loans, physical loans per library, where it's the individual libraries. Yes, if you add those together, then yes, the physical loans are greater than digital loans. The digital loans are not attributed to a particular library. It's for the library service.
Yeah. So your claim is that the cumulative total of all the physical loans are increasing at a higher rate than digital loans in general?
Yes, and that was supported by the annual update last year, and it is supported by the data that the physical, in the last 3 years at least, the physical has continued to increase higher than digital. And I guess my question is, perhaps, that's a long lens and there's COVID, and yes, it's changed, but there's certainly a resurgence in physical is from the data that's presented.
That's
a
good question.
Yeah.
Do you have any other questions?
Thank you. Yep. Chair, there was another slide there around the geographical.
Yeah, this is the population growth graph?
Yep. I guess I'd just ask the question that is a map based on growth and not a map based on density. And through our processes, through our CSFR, we very much looked at density, and it paints a very different story. Like, obviously in the north you have a massive large land mass and the growth is higher, but my question is, how come density wasn't compared to, given Burleigh Heads is high density, as the density in that corridor, and with the closure of one of those libraries, certainly that ring you can see at Burleigh Heads, does that expose a gap to that community that is already, it is not as growing as fast as the north because it's already got the density?
So what's your question?
My question is,
why wasn't density instead of density?
Have officers looked at density, and will there be a gap based on those rings there?
Maybe.
Through the chair, Emily Welsh, Coordinator Community Infrastructure Planning. So we've looked at the local government infrastructure plan, which has got a desired standard of service for library provisions. So it bases it on a population base. So that considers density population growth between up to the 2046 catchment base. So we look at it based in catchment. So we've got a northern, central and southern catchment. So what we've done is really investigate that southern catchment because this is the area of the city where it matters, the change. We've identified that based on current supply, we have quite a significant oversupply of district libraries in that catchment. So the provision is 1 library per 85,000 residents. So that considers density population growth as per the city plan.
Just on that, with the 1 per 85,000, that's a district library, correct? Under the DSS.
What's the DSS stand for?
The desired, thank you, but thank you, appreciate it. The desired standards of service, and it's not a maximum. It's the minimum threshold as we plan for our density and our growth.
Cool.
There's 2 libraries. They're about 400 to 500 square metres. I have looked at the DSS, but it does, for the 85,000, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but the DSS says that there'd be 2,000 square metres of library space for a district hub to service 85,000. So these 2 libraries together still only account for half, 1,000 square metres.
It's an interesting question. How would you respond?
So through the chair, there's also in the table, in the city plan, there's an area prescribed per 1,000 residents or persons. So we've really looked at that and broken that down. So the Burleigh Head Library is the smallest library space out of our libraries. So it doesn't have this significant contribution to that area component in the DSS. So we've looked at that. We've looked at all parts of the desired standard of service individually and confirmed that the closure of the library would still maintain an oversupply.
I appreciate the response. I have a different view, but thank you. And my last question on the finance, sorry, if you could just jump back to the last slide of the library performances. And I'm not disputing that currently.
This one? The slide we went before?
Yeah, Burleigh Heads. The other one, sorry, there should be a...
Loans or?
Yeah.
That's physical loans?
Yeah, physical loans. I guess my question is, if we look at the lowest performance of any library, hypothetically it was the view of council not to do Burleigh Heads. I mean, the obvious question is, does that mean we then wind up the next library that's lowest with being Coolangatta right there? Is it based on lowest? Someone's always going to be the lowest.
That was a question for council. Council made that decision. The data was provided by the officers and they made a recommendation. But really, it was a decision of council. It's hard to ask officers the question about why council did something because we did it.
Yes,
so maybe you could rephrase the question.
Could I rephrase? So if Burleigh Heads was amalgamated off to Burleigh Waters, would officers recommend that the next one is Coolangatta because they're based on loans and visitation?
Well, it's not really a question for today. We're not talking about Coolangatta today. But the answer, from my perspective as a councillor, is maybe. But it's also, it's a conversation for another day. At the moment, the lease at Coolangatta expires in 2029 and we need to come up with a solution. But that's a decision for another day. It's not about the Burleigh Heads Library today.
Yeah.
And I don't think officers should be expected to answer the question about what council may or may not want to do as we come towards the end of the Coolangatta lease. That's a separate decision of council.
I was more talking about the strategic planning, but I'm happy to just move on to the question.
Councillor Hammer had next questions.
I just wanted to seek some clarity. Because I'm quite caught up in the language and the recommendation, and the answer kind of connects to this. So I have a library lounge in Ormeau. It is a certain amount of square metres. It has a certain amount of hot shelves and kids programming. It only has 1 FTE at it. So would a library lounge in Burleigh Heads require 1 or 2 FTEs?
Through the chair, the lounges are completely different. So your lounge is different, just like the Palm Beach lounge is different. So it really depends on the amount of services that are going to be provided. Depending on the recommendation, if you're going to have children's programming, and we would need to have at least 2 officers to support that programming. But the lounges, like libraries, are all quite different. So it's a bit difficult to get an exact like for like.
Is the Ormeau Library Lounge co-located with the Ormeau Community Centre?
It's inside. We took over 2 old office spaces and knocked out a wall to create a little hub until the main library is built in a few years' time.
Is there a librarian and a community centre staff member?
No. There's just a librarian inside the little hub. That's all we have at that centre.
Okay.
Correct, and you have some early childhood programming there, so all up it's 2 resources to do the lounge and programming.
That makes sense. So my second question was, because I actually think it's an important nuance, because this is a building with 2 levels.
Yeah.
And so if there was a desire to have a library lounge and kids programming, as I understand it through Ormo, that works when the hall you're going to use is right next to the library. Like, it being on separate levels would not work or make as much sense. So if there was a desire to do this, the concept of possibly taking over the old councillor offices or part of upstairs next to the hall would be the optimal model, leaving the level up art space as planned downstairs. Would that be officers?
That's
most
the
likely
optimum
position?
model.
Yeah. Okay. So, Mr. Chair, if that's okay, and just to me, as I read that recommendation at the moment, that's not what I take from that. So if that's the intent, is a library lounge,
words to better describe
is a library lounge with kids programming in the hall. I think that needs to be called out specifically, and then maintaining the level up program in the bottom floor as planned, because it sounds like there's been a lot of thought put into why that space and size and location worked. Maybe I could come around to supporting something look like that, but it needs to be pretty specific for me to consider that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, is there any other questions? I've got Councillor Wilkinson saying to you, Councillor Doran, you're welcome to have a question, or I can sort of proceed to... Does everyone want a break?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so let's take a 9-minute break. We'll be back at 10:30. Thank you for your patience. All right, during the short break, Councillor Fowler and Councillor Martin and Councillor Marshall were able to come up with some slightly adjusted words, and I think there's a few questions that a few people have about the motion, or maybe, did you want to ask questions about the motion first? Does anyone have any questions about the motion? Councillor Hamill.
Mr Chair, if I could seek clarity, so I respect it now says library lounge, but if I could hear from officers that their understanding of how physically in the building that would work, because when I made the suggestion before, it was very much with the idea that the ground level remains the level up as planned and funded, and that the upstairs level will be used for a library lounge and then the programming. So is that how officers now understand that?
I'm going to start with Councillor Fowler, because as the mover of the motion, that's a question about what the motion intends. What do you say about that?
Thank you, Chair. I think at this stage, being that these are conversations that are happening in this space, I don't think it's fair to really determine a location, and I'd be keen for that to be the next step after this resolution. Perhaps that can be provided to all councillors, what city officers intend to do, and have some time to think about it before full council. Perhaps that could be a way forward.
I'm going to field that question and through to Melinda. Tell us about the implications of the level up space downstairs being displaced by library services. How would that work? And what's the capacity of the upstairs area to deliver either library services or level up programming?
Through the chair, I believe that the arts offering downstairs would be limited if there were family engagement or children's programming on the same level.
Because of the possible nature of adult themes in some of the arts. We're talking about teenagers, they talk about difficult topics at times, and that's important, but that might not be good to co-locate with children's books.
Correct, yeah.
And logistically, what's the upstairs area? It's got a lower ceiling, and that's...
I believe that the upstairs area would not lend itself to an exhibition space as well as downstairs, and potentially the fit out would much be preferable downstairs because of the ceiling heights, the natural light, and all of the other considerations that has worked in the design so far.
Okay. Yep. And from a library perspective, is there anything preventing the library lounge in whatever form to be located upstairs if council decided to provide the budget and make that happen?
Through the chair, no. I think, though, referencing Luke's comment about people that might be residing in there at the moment, and that obviously need to be some fit out, so some capex costs, but otherwise, no, we could do children's programming and provide a small library lounge upstairs.
Right, okay. So, Councillor Fowler, it's your motion, but that was your question. Did that answer your question satisfactorily?
Mr Chair, I appreciate the answer from officers, but I also respect Councillor Fowler's input that probably if supported, between now and full council, there'd be some more detail could be worked through. That's important for me. Mr Chair, I did have an amendment possibly, or would like to flesh out something else in regards to the motion. So, respecting the fact that there's already been a budget decision made on allocation of funds for this year, obviously what we're talking about here has a budget implication and it refers to the special budget committee. Can I just seek clarity? Is that the 27-28 budget process, or is that upcoming budget meetings? What's it actually being referred to?
So it's my understanding that no library lounge could be established without a resolution of the special budget committee. There is no funding available in the budget for anything to be established at Burleigh Heads as at the time that it closes once Burleigh Waters reopens. Would that be a fair statement?
Correct.
There's a special budget committee on the 17th of September, so council could potentially resolve at that meeting to allocate the required budget at that time, 17th of September, but then there'd be a subsequent council meeting we'd wait for to have that kind of ratified or endorsed. Councillor Fowler.
Thank you, Chair. I just thought it was worth noting that the library would still need to close to do the works required. So the library would be closed until January. So a conversation about budget needs to happen, but the intent of this was to have that conversation at Special Budget Committee, but also,
you're anticipating that the Burleigh Heads Library would close at the time it's meant to close, some sort of refit would occur, and then in January it would reopen in its new format.
it needs to still, my understanding through you to city officers, is that the library still needs to close to have the works created, and at this stage the plan is to reopen in January. Is that correct?
And
through the chair, that's correct.
When is it proposed that the Level Up program commence in this financial year?
January.
In March, through the chair, March. But the first exhibition in January was our plan.
So first exhibition in January of 2027?
Through the chair, that's correct. A retrospective exhibition of Level Up over the past 10 years, but the next cohort of Level Up participants will be in March.
Okay, great. Any other quick? Councillor Curtis.
Thank you, Chair, and I appreciate there's some flexibility on the actual location of where the lounge would sit, etc. So a question on notice when we get information back before full council. Could we please interrogate or understand if there is any identified future use for the vacant areas within that building so that we understand what we might be compromising by taking a different path?
Yep, please. That's a question through to the officers. What are we using it for? You said there's staff in there currently. Is that a long-term plan?
I'll need to take that on notice, and find out the long-term plan.
Councillor Hamill.
Mr Chair, well, we're doing information on notice before full council, appreciating that the final budget decision would be through the special budget process.
Yes.
I would like to be furnished before full council with an understanding of what the implementation of this recommendation could cost.
Yes.
I believe that detail would be easy enough to pull together before full council.
Yep. No troubles. Is that taken on notice? Is that okay? Yeah. Councillor Doran.
Thank you, Chair. I was wondering if there was anyone from the Finance Department here that might be able to tell councillors or inform us as to what our 25-26 surplus position was at the end of last financial year, because a lot of the discussions around today was around a decision made during special budget process, and we've obviously had new information at the end of the financial year that might be impactful in considering the cost implications here.
Ainsley.
Morning, councillors. Through the chair, the end of financial year 25-26 report will be coming through to councillors as a part of the July budget review special budget committee meeting that you've referred to in September. If you're happy perhaps to go into closed, given that's a budget discussion.
So you're concerned that the answer to that question needs to be provided in closed because it hasn't been considered by council yet?
That's correct.
Yeah. Councillor Doran, did you want to move to close, or how do you want to? Of course you can.
Just in that I accept that there's still waiting or subject to the QAO audit review. I'm reading an email, which I'm sure you know I've got. I'm wondering, just query that answer, Ainsley. We have the information which I've got, which our councillors are privy to. It doesn't say private and confidential in the email, but I'll defer to you that it might be, so I'm not going to read anything out. But it does outline a position. I'm just sort of wondering whether you can outline whether it was a greater position in terms of surplus or deficit versus what was budgeted, I guess is my question. If I could reframe it like that, so maybe we don't need to
there's nothing secret about the idea that we received a grant from the state government.
No, it's not a grant from state government. It's about our surplus position at the end of 25-26 financial year for the city budget,
right.
And whether it was up or down on what we expected at the end of financial year in terms of cash.
Do you want to take it on notice?
Through the chair, I'm happy to answer that question, given that you've got information in front of you, and I haven't seen that email, councillor, so I'll just roll with what I know. But yes, the report that will be coming to you as a part of the September budget review budget committee meeting will confirm that we ended the 25-26 financial year in an operating surplus and a higher one than what we had anticipated. Yep.
Any other questions, Councillor Doran? Any other questions from anyone else? We're going to move. If there's no more questions, we're going to move into debate. Councillor Fowler, I feel like I haven't really given you an opportunity to officially open.
It's been a long time
we
since,
have
but that's
talked about it a little bit, but you are welcome to open.
Thanks very much, Chair, and I really do appreciate all the work that's gone into this matter since we received the petition. I'd like to acknowledge the city officers for putting this report together, but also wanted to acknowledge the thousands of residents who did take time to sign the petition and make their views known. I also would like to acknowledge our councillors down the end. We've got Councillor Josh Martin, the Divisional Councillor, and Councillor Nick Marshall, our Boundary Divisional Councillor, who have funded from their own private laws to keep some sort of a library service happening at Burleigh Heads while Burleigh Waters is underway. We're through.
Thanks to the acting mayor for running it too.
Sorry, and thank you very much to the acting mayor next to me, who also had a big part to play in that.
You still have the floor, Councillor Fowler.
Having considered both the petition and the officer's recommendation, I came in listening today, really open to the conversation, and my feeling really it doesn't need to be an either-or discussion. I don't believe the community or councillors, for that matter, should be asked to choose between a valued library service and new opportunities through a Level Up program. I believe we can deliver both. So under this change recommendation, Burleigh Heads would continue to have a genuine but smaller library service. Residents could still access popular new releases and hot reads, utilise the children's collection, especially those children's books that are connected to the family engagement programs like our Rhyme Time and our Story Time. They would still have an opportunity to engage with a library staff member and participate in those family programs and community activities, and also access our amazing digital library collection that we do have across the city. And at the same time, Level Up could operate from the same building, using that space required to deliver the programs and opportunities for young people and emerging artists. These two, in my view, are not mutually exclusive. In fact, in my view, they can be complementary. So both seek to educate, connect and engage our community. So what I'm proposing is a practical middle ground, a middle ground that recognises the significant community support for retaining a library presence in Burleigh Heads, a middle ground that allows Council to continue supporting innovation, creativity and youth development through Level Up, and a middle ground that ensures that this valued community facility continues to serve a broad cross-section of our community. So rather than asking our residents and councillors to choose between the two worthwhile outcomes, let's bring them together under one roof and look at what that can look like. I believe that's a balanced, sensible and community-focused way forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Fowler. Does anyone want to speak against the motion? All right. So I'm going to speak against it because I'm concerned that we are significantly deviating from the decision that we made about the Community Services and Facilities Review. I love libraries. I think they're really important. I think we have an opportunity here to turn Fraserley Hall into what I describe as a book set-free, hub, where some of the 25,000 books we retire each year through the Book Set Free program could be located in that area. A significant proportion of those are children's books, and I think there is a resource here in Fraserley Hall that can deliver a great outcome where children and families can gather to enjoy great reading experiences. I know that I rarely read my kids the newest book. I read my kids when they were little. I read them Dr. Seuss over and over and over again, and they loved that book. They liked that book that they always had. I think there's an opportunity here for us to have some respect for the decisions that we've made about the amalgamation of the Burleigh Heads and Burleigh Waters libraries over time. I'm encouraged by the strong debate today. I think it's been great to see lots of different remarks made about how important the library is to the Burleigh community. But looking at the data that we've seen through this report, I just can't see why we would continue down a track of providing these two libraries within a 7-minute drive of one another when there are so many other priorities coming up over the coming years, particularly when we have such a collection of library books that we recycle some 100,000 each year, of which 25,000 could be children's books. This seems like a really low-hanging fruit for us to do the right thing by ratepayers at the same time as deliver some great programming in what sounds like a nominally underutilised hall. And I have some reservations about the way that this would potentially evolve, potentially displacing in the foyer areas some of the Level Up programs. So I'm encouraged that that's not seeming the intent of Councillor Fowler, and I don't think necessarily Councillor Martin, but I have some reservations about the Level Up program is something that I think is very important for arts development in our city, and I would hate to think that it was displaced by a program delivered in a library. And I can only really support that upstairs Fradgley Hall area being used for libraries. Yeah. Speaking for or having a question? A question?
Mr. Chair, I'm just seeking if the mover would be more open to adjusting line 1 so that instead of it confirming a commitment, because that's getting ahead of the budget process and getting all the detail back from officers and costings, if it could be reworded to that council investigates the reopening of a staff library lounge so that we're not putting the horse before the cart.
Yeah, so I don't think we have a commitment to opening a staff library before this resolution, so the words don't make sense either. It's another reason why it's perhaps not the right word. So we can't confirm a commitment that we don't currently have.
That was why I was suggesting to the mover that for me to possibly support this recommendation, I'd need to see that just tidied up, because it 1 and 4 counter each other. So I think if it investigates that, it would be better.
The motion, I've accepted the motion, but I think it does need tidying up.
Sorry, Chair, can I just say confirms its intent to reopen? Could I just make those words instead of... So removing investigates, that council confirms its intent to...
Can you just say the council decides to reopen?
I'm just trying to take on board Councillor Hamill's feedback on the budget line. So we're confirming that's our intent and it will be finalised at special budget.
So what is the committee's obligation is to make a recommendation, and so what we're saying, we recommend that council decides to reopen. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. Confirming intent is, yeah. It is your motion. You can use whatever words you like. But obviously with Councillor Marshall's help. Councillor Marshall still wants to speak in favour, so Councillor Hamill, you still have a question?
An amendment, actually, Chair, to the motion, or an opposed amended motion.
Yes.
Seeking that, while I'm still not 100% sure if I'm with this, I may be more comfortable with the idea that it's divisionally funded to support it. So I'd propose an amended motion that leaves this as is, but adds a 6 that if it is proceeded, it's funded through Division 13 LAW works.
Until what time?
Until the 27-28 budget process, where then through a decision of budget we can decide if it is funded through whole of city at that time.
I would accept that amendment. Oh, question, yeah.
Then how much will it cost? Sorry, Chair. I think I've shown I'm willing to be workable so that everyone can get everything out of this, but I suppose it would be difficult to have a blank check without having an understanding of the dollars. And I think because there's also some queries at an officer level as to where within the building. I suppose I just don't want to have the blank check if it then means a whole heap more construction. Like, are we going to do this affordably? Will it service the needs of the community? So I think I need to understand what that looks like. But if through the special budget process, my question would be, would that not be a discussion at the special budget project process? We obviously will look at our performance of the end of financial year, where the city's landed, and where the source comes from and allocated to which code. Would that not be point 4?
Do you mind, Chair, if I gave some context to why I was suggesting it in the first place?
I don't have a problem accepting your amendment if there's a seconder. I don't think it's an unlawful amendment to suggest that be the funding source. It doesn't have to be the final position, but it's not a.
And so that would be my counter.
It doesn't change.
That'd be my counter, Chair. Is that because we're talking about intent in this, so my intent would be that the final decision on that will be still through the budget process, but it makes it clear that my support might be contingent upon that. So I would put that forward as an amended motion.
Okay. So do you want to word that amendment and we can consider it?
So would it just
Chair, I'm happy to accept it if we just word it into the current.
Okay.
Or we'll do that, yeah. So it would probably be that...
I'm just waiting for the words.
Yeah. That...
Is that enough for you?
Yeah, and then we might just need, because my idea was until the 27-28 budget process, so that the financial impacts of the decision be referred to the Special Budget Committee. 6, the council notes the outcomes of this recommendation are funded by Division 13 local area works to be reconsidered as part of the 27-28 budget.
Yep.
I think would achieve that. And Mr. Chair, so, sorry, it's an amendment, so if there's no I won't talk anymore unless there's a seconder.
Yeah, I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor Castro. Seconded by Councillor Castro. We have an amendment I think it meets the criteria. It doesn't change the intent. It just identifies a funding source that is subject to special budget committee anyway.
Yep.
So amendment moved by Councillor Hamill, seconded by Councillor Castro. You get to open.
Yep. So, Mr. Chair, thank you for that. And just to be clear of the reasoning for adding number 6 is that I'm very cognizant of the conversations with councillors around their concerns around that the strategic intent of the whole of city library plan and the allocation of resources, that there is a feeling that the DSS is being overcooked here, and that this is a very targeted request through this recommendation for additional services at Burleigh Heads, so for a particular community in a particular location, and that I think it would be fair that that's funded through divisional funds instead of whole of city funds. In the end, they're all ratepayer funds, but the whole of city decision was to fund the Level Up Art program and to invest considerably more money into Burleigh Waters. If there's going to be more money spent at Burleigh Heads, I think it's appropriate it comes from the bucket of money that is allocated to that division and that suburb and to that councillor to do that. Ultimately, the decision, if that's moving forward, funded through whole of city or by the divisional councillor, will go through the budget process. But I think for me, and I don't want to talk on behalf of other councillors, but possibly for other councillors have concerns about the allocation of more funding to an area that is already overprescribed under our DSS, when we have other areas that are underprescribed, that would be a fair compromise, that it's funded from that bucket of money specifically for that division and that councillor.
Yeah. Anyone want to speak against the amendment? Councillor Farrell, you get to close.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the amendment. I do have some reservation when we don't know how much money we're actually all voting on to put towards another councillor's divisional law budget, but happy to accept it, and let's walk the journey and see what that looks like before full council, if that's possible through city officers. I do think it's a good middle ground. I think we've seen some library lounge areas that are bigger than kiosks. They have more, they have some books on shelves, they have children's programming, they have the things that we're hearing from this community that they do want. I note that it's smaller, but I'm hopeful that it gives us the opportunity to have both services running from the same building. And I'll close there. Thank you.
No problems. That's the final of the debate. There's no questions, so we're at that. We're past that day. All those in favour of the amendment? Yep, that's it. That's enough. Motion's carried. All those against? No one. Yeah, it's motion's carried anyway. Well, it wasn't unanimous. Not everyone voted, but there wasn't a division called either, so it's fine. So the amendment becomes the motion, and the mover of the amendment, being Mark, can now speak to it.
Mr. Chair,
he's got a name change.
Mr. Chair, do appreciate the level of debate here today, level of inquiry with officers. Have really enjoyed that, and can I compliment the report from officers on this one? I thought the amount of data and information was really important, and do appreciate that. Chair, I can't lie. I think between now and full council, there's a fair bit more information that I'm going to receive to possibly be able to support this at full council. But I think as a middle ground, as Councillor Fowler refers to it as, to get us to full council, to allow for more information to come back from officers, so that at full council, all 15 elected representatives can consider the full financial impacts, the actual pragmatic logistics of how it works, is a good outcome. But I'm going to need that information before full council to possibly support this at full council to move forward with. I have a concern, as Councillor Curtis kind of alluded to in one of her questions, around that all of us endorsed a whole of city strategy in this space around community services and facilities and what's going forward. Now, the specifics of what was going to happen in each location were always going to be done through this, that you have the broad whole of city program and strategy, but then you have individual decisions to make. And I think at the time, some of us acknowledged that it was going to get interesting when it got into specific areas, and we've kind of got the first of these here. But Mr. Chair, I have to be very cognizant of representing an area that at the moment has the largest population of any division in the city and only has a library lounge. And when I'm faced with an area that has got 2 libraries within 4 kilometres, I do struggle with that a little bit. So I reinforce that I'm going to need more comfort between now and full council in terms of the financial impact of this moving forward to support this at full council. But to get us to full council, to walk the journey, as Councillor Fowler put it, I think it's an appropriate recommendation for committee to put to council. It'll get that extra information, and we'll see at full council where it falls out.
Speakers against? Yeah. Without a speaker against, I just think this is entirely contradictory to the work that we've done with the Community Service and Facilities Review. I think we worked really hard to think about how to be more efficient as a city and deliver community hubs that are productive and appropriate and of the right size, and notwithstanding Councillor Martin's commentary around that the DSS and the related metrics involve a 2,000 square metre GFA. I think that Burleigh Waters, with its free parking and its its unique variables, actually lends itself well to that hub for this area. I think Burleigh Heads itself has evolved over time, and whilst I actually don't mind the idea of a master plan redeveloping that site, and that including some sort of community facility as a major hub, that work hasn't been done, and I think we're heading down a track where we're just keeping services together that are some of the least patronised in our city, and I think we are being somewhat irresponsible with the decisions we've both made previously and with the financial impacts of what we're deciding, notwithstanding that the amendment here proposes that local area work should fund it. My view is that local area work should really go towards things like parks and playgrounds and pathways and these local responsive things, rather than operational activities like libraries that are less patronised and so less patronised that both Burleigh Waters and Burleigh Heads together remain collectively one of the lowest patronised libraries in the city. I'm troubled by the decision and I can't support it. So, Councillor Marshall. Speaking for, yes. Was it confusing?
No. Yeah. Which way are you going? Look, I just want to thank also the officers for the work. I'm probably saying this a little bit for the gallery and for people that might be watching, that the officers aren't the enemy. Sometimes I feel they have to deliver the bad news, and there's daggers coming from the gallery that they're the enemy. We set them a task in budget to save money and maximise services. So I just want to acknowledge that. I also want to acknowledge just that Level Up isn't the enemy. I've had a few emails that somehow people have thought that they've come in and stolen the library and the space. I just want to make that clear as well, that it's a fantastic program. I hate the idea that one has to go for the other when really they're both so inextricably linked. I spoke to Fleur about, I think it'd be fantastic to have something upstairs where young families are coming in for rhyme time that can walk through the gallery downstairs, that can get more people, more eyeballs on what the arts provide. So I want to acknowledge that and just make that clear. Look, this library doesn't sit necessarily in my division, even though my office was there for 2 years. But it's a central point for many people in my division to come. For a number of years now, we've sold the light rail as being a little bit of a magical panacea of ways to get around our area, and this is the library that's on the light rail. It is the library that young mums during the middle of the day can put their prams on the light rail, come to this location. It's close to the stops, it's close to coffee shops. It's the one thing I know, having gone to Broadbeach Library, which is a fantastic library, now where my office is this library was more of a community space. It was more where people came to meet. It wasn't about the books, but it was about a community space. And my area, Division 12, is the smallest division in actual area, but I've got, other than potentially Councillor Hamill's area, I've got the same amount of population as everyone else. And so there's a feeling, and look, it's I think we all have heard it and seen it on social media, that sometimes we're losing social capital. We've lost that trust sometimes of the community, and particularly in our area, there's a feeling that people are unhappy. People are not happy with us, not happy with any level of government. I'm not just targeting council. And I think a lot has to do with timing. We've had 4 or 5 years of the light rail being built, streets being closed, people can't access their own homes. There's a street in Councillor Martin's area that was closed for 12 months. People had to park outside. that street, there's anger. And then when you lose a community space like this, that just ramps that anger up. You know, as the smallest division, I've found the last 2 years I'm fighting for things that shouldn't be lost in a division where we've already got the highest percentage of population per square metre. We decommissioned the depot, and then a month later we were told, oh, by the way, that open space park, even though you've got the least amount of open space of any other division, we're going to take that to put a satellite depot in. So I had to spend months fighting that. Obviously, we keep talking about young people wanting to stay in the city and learn in the city, work in the city. We make it easier to have semi-detached granny flats, but then we change the parking rules so that those kids who live with their mum and dad can't park in the street. People are angry about that. People are angry about losing the library. I just think that at a certain point, these decisions make sense individually and in a silo, but when you collectively put it together and you talk to the community, you talk to the people that email you, that talk to you on Facebook, they're not happy. And sometimes they're not happy because we haven't looked at everything. I am happy to see that we've tried to choose a middle ground. Obviously, I've said it here before, as a people pleaser, I'm trying to find a way to make this work. I don't want Level Up to not be there, but I also don't want the library to move. So I won't go so far to say is put Division 12 down there as to help funding just yet. We'll wait and see what that costs. But look, Councillor Martin and I will talk about whatever it costs to keep a library service going there in the interim. So look, I want to thank Councillor Fowler for putting this forward. Councillor Martin and I have had some long nights debating, probably also whinging about where this is going to land, but I'm happy to see that where we've landed at the moment is a good middle ground. So thanks.
Well said. I'm going to take a speaker against. No? Councillor Curtis, if you'd like.
Thanks. Thank you, Chair. And I'm not on this committee, but I just wanted to take the opportunity to support the principles that you've put forward, Chair, quite bravely. This is, in my view, a symptom of strategic ill discipline. We might not have the finalised figures, but the re-establishment of an additional staffed community facility at this location will absolutely have consequences. I am certainly comforted by the idea that, according to the amended recommendation, that will potentially be isolated to just a local budget, because I absolutely couldn't support if it was proposed to come from a finite citywide libraries budget. It is wonderful to see the Burleigh Heads community so well represented here today, but if funding is to come from city funds, it will eventually have consequences for communities outside of Burleigh Heads who aren't as well serviced for libraries and are travelling a lot further than 3.8 kilometres to access their nearest library. Unfortunately, those communities aren't here today, and the reason is because they are relying on our collective decision-making and our legislated obligation to make decisions that are in the best interest of the city, not just isolated communities. I think we make either or decisions every day, and that's a very real obligation and reality of balancing finite budgets and resources. And I think people lose trust when decision-making isn't consistent, and I thank you for your support in trying to keep us on a steady path, Chair.
Speakers for Councillor Martin, you had your hand raised before.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Of course. I'm not a voting member, but I'd like to speak for. I'd firstly, I just want to appreciate everyone in the room and councillors working on this motion, and officers, obviously. Look, is it everything I want? Absolutely not. But I just want to acknowledge that it finds a middle ground. I do want to acknowledge the community that's come out today and who have reached out to all of us, but I've spent a lot of time dealing with the community and over 3,500 signatories to the petition. But more importantly, I've spoken to people on the ground how they use it. It's those that are very vocal and those that are not, and I've definitely felt the needs of the community on that. The reason why it's not everything I want is that I am saddened. I am saddened by this today because this is the third oldest library we have in the city. With Southport, Coolangatta and Burleigh Heads since 1967. This has been the community library. And I don't agree that it's fiscally irresponsible. In fact, I think the decision that happened in budget, and is why I voted against the city budget, is I think that decision was fiscally irresponsible. We on the basis of community frontline services that were not being decreased, where this, in my view, clearly was, we have currently, even whilst all this light rail construction mess that Burleigh's been putting up with, we've still had 53,000 visits, people voting with their feet while that is occurring. And I love Level Up. I don't want to, but if it came down to it, if I had $1 to spend, I would be putting it at 53,000 physical visits to the 20,000 visits for Level Up right now. We have 67,000 book loans in this year. I mean, it blows my mind. If you've been to Burleigh in the last few years, you just know you were locked out. And so those 67,000 loans happened even whilst we reduced the Saturday night hours, the Thursday night hours. So I think it's actually, and if I look at the data that was supplied, in the last 3 years, Burleigh Heads has grown 38%, but in last year, it was 38%, the highest of any library during the light rail construction. So I think it is value for money if I had to split the dollar, it's better in the library service, but I'm pleased that there's going to be an option to have both. I think for me, it does align. It absolutely aligns with the planning. Going back from 2007, Burleigh Heads was identified as one of two sites. So the Stocklands option or the integration of a larger community hub in Burleigh Heads. And I appreciate there might have been a view of which is better, but the resolution was they are two live resolutions, and Burleigh Heads, it did not progress, but it hasn't gone away. We also had the Burleigh Heads placemaking, which is meant to commence after light rail. The integrated site is identified, and it is a live document. It was endorsed in 2023, and there was opportunities to expand the library and even perhaps a museum, office spaces, but the library is very core to that. We've doubled down on that. We've adopted that placemaking plan to go into the new planning scheme just recently. The CSFR, it aligns. Yes, I'm not disputing that there were two local size libraries that could be amalgamated into one district level library. So two smaller sites into one larger. But what it never said is, hey, let's put it at Burleigh Waters. It still very much had a live, and the report says that we're live to the opportunity of both either Burleigh Waters or Burleigh Heads. And now I think everyone would say what needs to go with that is fulsome community consultation. And that process, the CSFR process, we talked about it at GAF this week, that Stage 3 has no funding in the budget to complete that work. That work hasn't been completed. So we need to get that work done so we have a roadmap, so we're making strategic decisions for the future. And the largest opportunity, light rail, it's billions of dollars. We need to understand the impact of it. I very much think the numbers will go higher with the light rail there. And I think this change, whilst it's not everything I want to happily reinstate the library, but this gives the opportunity to evaluate that, to see how the light rail will impact visitation. But any larger integration, amalgamation or super sites or whatever it's going to be for the Burleigh catchment need to have community consultation, and they need to be strategic proposals that the community that we get to vote on and that we endorse through the completion of the community services and facilities review. So thank you, Chair.
Pleasure. Anyone else want to speak against? Councillor Fowler, you get to close.
I think I've said all I need to say, Chair. Thank you.
All right, we're going to call the division and we're going to take a vote. All those in favour of the motion have Councillor Castro, Councillor Hamill, Councillor Fowler. Oh, sorry, Councillor Doran, my mistake. Councillor Wilkinson, Councillor O'Neill, Councillor Marshall. Those against? Councillor Tozer. Motion is carried. Thank you, Councillor O'Neill. To the gallery, that's the end of the item for now. We've got other items to discuss. You're welcome to stick around and enjoy the rest of the show. Otherwise, you're also welcome to be excused if you'd like. That's the end of the Burleigh Heads Library one for today. I will welcome the team from Disaster Management. We've got a presentation from Troy, I believe. Troy, you're up. Thank you so much. Oh, councillors, order. Councillor Hummer, you leaving us?
Yes, thank you,
Troy, let's go.
Good morning, Chair, councillors. Today I'll be providing you with an overview of the 2026 Office of the Inspector General of Emergency Management Disaster Management Plan Assessment. For the Gold Coast, this assessment provides an opportunity to demonstrate the maturity of our local arrangements, highlighting the return on investment by Council and the continued evolution of our capability in response to an evolving disaster risk, operational experience and community need. The annual assessment forms part of Queensland's disaster management assurance framework and provides important mechanism for the City and the Gold Coast Local Disaster Management Group, incorporating the broader work being undertaken by the Local Recovery Group and the Local Disaster Coordination Centre to demonstrate that our preparation, response and recovery activities continue to support effective, contemporary and fit-for-purpose disaster management arrangements. This activity ensures we meet our obligations under the Disaster Management Act 2003. Importantly though, it is simply not a legislative compliance measure. It provides a structured way for us to measure our arrangements against the standard for disaster management in Queensland and identify where our capability is strong, where it is maturing and where continuous improvement can be targeted. The assessment highlights the strength in the City's leadership and governance arrangements. The Gold Coast Local Disaster Management Group, Local Recovery Group and Local Disaster Coordination Centre provide strong multi-agency framework for coordination, decision-making and operational support. These arrangements give the City structure, oversight and capability needed to manage complex disaster events effectively. Secondly, it highlights the City's depth of preparedness and exercising program, with 5 key major exercises and preparedness activities conducted, including Exercise Leviathan, a 3-day discussion and functional exercise on tsunami, Exercise Modus, a multi-council discussion exercise on evacuation capability, Exercise Notice, a discussion exercise with the Local Disaster Management Group on heatwave, the first ever held in Queensland, Exercise Opus, a field-based exercise to test and embed updates to the City's evacuation centre operations following lessons identified during Tropical Cyclone Alfred, Exercise Stricta Navis, a discussion and field-based exercise testing our business continuity arrangements in the event the Disaster Emergency Management Centre is unable to be used. And finally, our annual Disaster and Emergency Management Preparedness Forum. Each of these activities have improved operational readiness, tested our arrangements and validated plans, informing areas of ongoing development. Thirdly, it highlights the City's strength and in planning framework, with 7 plans and sub-plans either reviewed, revised or developed, including our Local Disaster Management Plan, sub-plans for tropical cyclone, tsunami, public information and warnings, solid waste and evacuation, as well as the Emergency Action Plan for Tullabudgera Creek Dam. The City has also continued to demonstrate innovation and sector leadership through a range of initiatives which included a new centralised AI-supported information and knowledge sharing platform that provides our personnel one place to access training, critical information, procedures and operational systems, improving our readiness and response. The new Common Operating Picture, a citywide situational awareness platform. Our continued implementation of the Disaster Resilience Scorecard, measuring and improving organisational resilience, with a report to be brought forward in more detail at next committee. The Community Recovery and Resilience Officer Program. This is delivering frontline community resilience actions and activities such as the Hinterland Connector and the Business Disaster Resilience Forum. We've also delivered improved community engagement around warnings and alerts, enhancing the community's understanding and ability to interpret warnings and take timely action when events occur, as well as targeted leadership development programs, strengthening our senior leaders' abilities to make informed, ethical decisions in complex and rapidly evolving disaster and emergency situations. Finally, this year's assessment explores business continuity and operational resilience, highlighting the City's ability to maintain disaster management operations. The assessment notes the robustness of our business continuity arrangements that are in place, including adequate alternate operating locations and remote coordination models. These arrangements were validated as part of Exercise Stricta Navis earlier this year, which tested a new alternative operating location as part of our transition away from the former site at Nerang, with a fully functioning coordination centre established in less than 2 hours, as well as these being tested in real-world events such as the COVID-19 pandemic and more recently the communications outage that we presented at last committee. Underpinning these arrangements, though, are a trained and capable workforce. The Gold Coast maintains a local disaster coordination centre workforce of 220 trained personnel, supported by an additional 80 trained in evacuation centre management, and of course our city's frontline workers, all playing a critical part during disaster events. This continued investment in workforce development, recruitment, retention and wellbeing ensures that our workforce remains sustainable, scalable and resilient. The key outcome of this assessment is assurance. Assurance that the city continues to meet and in many cases exceed its obligations under the Disaster Management Act, and we remain aligned with the standard for disaster management in Queensland. It's assurance that our arrangements are mature, capable and continuously improving, and assurance that Council's investment in disaster management is delivering tangible outcomes for the community. Beyond assurance, the assessment reinforces the city's position as a recognised leader in disaster management. Feedback from across Queensland local government and increasingly from interstate agencies and jurisdictions reflects the sector's interest in the innovations, the lessons learned and the good practice being developed right here on the Gold Coast, all of which is helping strengthen disaster management sector regionally, across the state and nationally. Thank you.
Thanks, Troy. Any questions about the report? Excellent. All right. Do I have a move for the officer's recommendation then? Thank you, Councillor Fowler. Seconded, Councillor Castro. Councillor Fowler. No debate? Councillor Castro, you're all good? We'll take the vote. All those in favour? Troy, Mark, no questions. You're obviously doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I think there's no general business notified. Call the meeting closed at 11:19.